The year is 1984. Garry Kasparov is trailing final against the then world champion Anatoly Karpov. So Karpov needs just one victory to win the match and keep his world championship title. Unfortunately for Karpov, that victory never comes. Kasparov comes swinging back into the match with 3 wins and makes the score 5-3. But just when it looked like the momentum was on Kasparov's side, FIDE decides to intervene and call off the match. Apparently, the match had gone for 5 months and it had taken a very heavy toll on the health of both the players. Kasparov was upset, but he gained important match experience, and soon this would prove effective when a year later he would defeat Karpov in the 1985 World Chess Championship match and become the world champion. And that marked the beginning of the prime Garry Kasparov era. So what made prime Garry Kasparov so good? Was he just extremely talented, or as the media likes to glorify, was he just born to play chess? By the end of this video, you're gonna find out, as well as discover important takeaways that can give you edge over other players. There are 5 main areas of strength that made prime Garry Kasparov so much stronger compared to the others during that era. Number 1, his opening preparation. In the 1990 World Championship match against Anatoly Karpov, Kasparov surprised everyone by playing the Scotch game with white, an opening that was widely considered harmless at the top level. However, Kasparov beat Karpov with the Scotch game and revived a dead opening. So how was Kasparov able to do that? He had a team of strong seconds who would help him prepare the openings, but so did Karpov, who was the more favored one in the Soviet Union. What advantage did Kasparov have? You see, the period from the late 1980s to 2000s saw the rise of computers in chess, but not everyone had access to them. Only the top players did. And this is where Kasparov was one of the best, if not the best, when it comes to using computers to aid his preparation. In many games, in fact, he would get a winning position right out of the opening. And this gave him a big advantage over older generations of that era who simply hated working with the computers. If you are watching this video today, chances are you have access to better technology than what prime Garry Kasparov had in his era. But with that also comes a choice. You can either use that better technology to move forward, or you can get left behind if you don't use it, just like the older generation of the Kasparov era. Apart from his opening preparation, Kasparov was also very well known for number 2, his deadly attacking skills. If you ask any aggressive chess player who their idol is, over 50% of them will say Garry Kasparov. The rest will say Mikhail Tal, but that's a debate for another day. You can let me know in the comment section who is your favorite. Kasparov had a very fine understanding of the dynamic factors of the game, or in other words, he was very good at sniffing chances to attack and pouncing on them. Speaking of that, if you enjoy watching classics of players like Kasparov, Carlsen, Fischer, Capablanca, you will find a video library of classics on this channel, so do consider subscribing here. Back to the topic, you could argue that Kasparov was naturally gifted at playing aggressive chess, but that alone wouldn't be enough against players like Karpov and Korchnoi, who were exceptional defenders themselves, with Karpov being at the height of his powers. However, Kasparov also had another major strength. Number 3, his exceptional calculation. There's a video on YouTube showing Kasparov's mind-blowing calculation as he explains the game to a TV presenter. Now, calculation skills demand a lot of focus and discipline, where you must sit patiently on the board and foresee the consequences of your moves. You can't just play on intuition or what comes to your feelings, basically. So Kasparov's calculation, combined with his fantastic opening preparation, gave him a huge edge over players like Viktor Korchnoi, who himself was very good at calculation, and this skill had helped him defend against crazy attacks of players like Mikhail Tal. There are many examples of Kasparov's fantastic calculation. Consider, for example, the famous h5 move that he played against Kramnik, ignoring the threat on his queen and choosing to counterattack, or his crazy double rook sacrifice against Veselin Topalov, where the black king gets hunted down. None of this would have been possible without Kasparov's exceptional calculation skills, and that also gave him an advantage in another area of the game, and that is number 4, his great endgame technique. Sometimes it's easy to forget how good Kasparov was in the endgame. He was just so dominant in other areas like openings and attack, that it's easy to ignore his endgame skills. There are very few players who could match prime Garry Kasparov in endgame, one of whom is of course his great rival Anatoly Karpov, who was perhaps the best endgame player of that era. Although I'm not so sure that everyone would agree with this, let me know what you think in the comments. However, Kasparov's exceptional endgame skills gave him a unique strategic advantage. Now, he no longer had to rely on his attacking skills to win every game. He could also outplay his opponents in equal, dull, and dry positions just by going into the endgame. And like every good endgame player, Kasparov was a fighter, which brings me to number 5, his do whatever it takes to win attitude. No matter how good their skill, every champion player will face a moment when he or she is completely losing. In the 1984 World Championship match against Karpov, Kasparov was one loss away from complete defeat. Similarly, in 1995, Kasparov was trailing Anand in the World Championship. Yet, in both these cases, Kasparov made a comeback and would win the World Championship title or retain the title. Notice that both these comebacks came against players like Anand and Karpov, who themselves are legends of the game. So this in itself is a very, very big achievement. Now, most people would bring up the match in 2000 when Kramnik dethroned Kasparov to become the new world champion. Yes, it's the same match when Kramnik played the infamous Berlin defense to counter Kasparov's preparation in the Roy Lopez opening. But do you remember what happened after the match was over? Kasparov learned from his defeats, and in the next matches they played, Kasparov has always kept a positive score against Kramnik, and he didn't even lose his world number 1 ranking. Kasparov was an exceptionally fast learner, and he would do whatever it takes to win. His retirement in 2005, when he was still the number 1 ranked player in the world, comes perhaps a little too early. But whenever Kasparov played, he always gave his best, and he worked hard rather than bothering about talent. And this is what made Garry Kasparov so good and so dangerous. Now, if you want to see a demonstration of his strength, I highly recommend you check the video out on the screen. I'll see you there.